There are more than 344,000 clinical trials in the United States and in more than 200 other countries. These clinical trials are all different, of course, but they have one goal in common: to be as productive as they possibly could be. Welcome to episode 6 of CTO, the Clinical Trials Optimization Podcast. CTO is a twice-monthly podcast that brings together clinical research stakeholders to exchange ideas, share knowledge, and think creatively about how to oversee, manage, and optimize clinical trial planning and execution. The podcast includes discussions with clinical research industry thought leaders and practitioners about how the industry is transforming clinical research design and operations to speed up the delivery of life-changing therapies. I'm your host, Linda Sullivan, and I want to thank you for joining me on this exciting journey to raise the bar on clinical trials and provide an interactive forum for discussing what we do professionally every day of our lives. We hope you'll subscribe to CTO on your favorite podcast platform so you'll automatically get every episode in your feed for free. In this episode, we'll be talking about risk-based quality management and the importance of data analytics and data surveillance. And we have just the person to discuss this important topic with us today. So let me introduce you to today's special guest, Steve Young. Steve Young is Chief Scientific Officer at CluePoints. He oversees the research and development of advanced methods for data analytics, data surveillance, and risk management, along with providing guidance to customers in RBQM methodology and best practices. Steve worked for 3 biopharmaceutical companies over a span of 15 years, where he assumed leadership positions in clinical data management and led the successful enterprise rollout of EDC at both J&J and Centricor. He spent an additional 6 years with eClinical solution providers, Metadata, and Omnicom, leading the development of analytics and risk-based quality management solutions and providing RBQM consultation to many organizations. Steve also led a pivotal RBQM-related analysis in collaboration with Transcelerate and is currently leading RBQM best practice initiatives for several industry consortiums. He holds a master's degree in mathematics from Villanova University. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you very much, Linda. Good to be here.
So you have quite an extensive background, both on the sponsor and the vendor side. Tell us a little bit more about how you ended up getting involved with risk-based quality management to begin with.
Sure. That's a good question, Linda. And as you just read in my bio, I spent first 15 years in the industry in clinical operations, mostly in clinical data management organizationally. But it was really 12 years ago when I was first introduced to the concept of risk-based monitoring. I was still at J&J at the time. And someone put it on the table in response to a call from senior management to think outside the box and really look to improve efficiency in clinical operations. And as myself and a few other colleagues really got familiar with the concept, we got extremely passionate about it. I think it was an epiphany for me. We had talked about a lot of the challenges that we were having in the industry in the years leading up to that, talking around it. But when I first got introduced to the concept back 12 years ago is when, for me, the passion really started. We didn't really get the opportunity to implement it at that time for a number of reasons. But ever since then, I've been very, really increasingly focused in my career on working on risk-based monitoring and analytics around risk-based monitoring and risk-based quality management.
Well, and obviously it sounds like this interest started way before ICHE 6R2 came along. So, it sounds like you were part of that pioneering group thinking ahead. Did you ever imagine that we were going to get to a point where we are today, where it's become, in a very quick amount of time, something that everybody's thinking about?
Yeah, it is amazing, and it's very very promising to see where we've come by this year in 2020. Where, as you say, risk-based monitoring is now it's encoded in ICH, really strongly promoted by the major regulatory authorities, and I would say most of the industry at this point is at least piloting. If not fully implementing the principles of risk-based monitoring and risk-based quality management. I have to admit, though, that I was naive enough back in 2008, 2009 to think that this was going to take hold in the next few years. And of course, I was wrong. It took a little bit longer than that. We live in a conservative industry. It's been that way for a long time. There's a number of reasons for that. But it has definitely taken, it's taken 12 years to get to where we are. I'm glad we are where we are. There's definitely some work left to do on this front, though.
Well, moving to today, you're now part of an organization called CluePoints, which is one of the major players in the risk-based quality management area. Tell us a little bit about CluePoints and its philosophy, and why did you decide that was a place that you were going to move to?
Yeah, no, great question. So I've been with CluePoints for a little over 4 years now. Really excited to be with CluePoints, by the way. I met the co-founders, Francois Torsch and Patrick Hughes, back, probably around 2013, 2014, a couple of years after they had officially incorporated as a company. And we really hit it off very quickly because we really shared the vision and a lot of passion for risk-based monitoring and what analytics could do in support of risk-based monitoring and risk detection. So I had been thinking about CluePoints for several years and finally had the opportunity to join them in 2016. CluePoints was founded originally, the core of CluePoints was a very advanced statistical engine that was designed to detect risk in the conduct of clinical trials by essentially statistically vetting all of the clinical data coming in from trials and looking for sites or regions that had strange patterns of data that might indicate problems in the conduct of the study. It had proven very effective in usage over the previous 10 to 15 years that it was being developed. They finally incorporated, and by the way, originally the methods were developed to detect specifically fraud in clinical trials. But what the founders realized over time, working with several different sponsors on use cases, was that the methods were very effective at finding various types of problems in study conduct and related data quality. And that's where we were really founded. CluePoints over the past, since it was incorporated over 7 years, has really expanded the solution offering we have to cover really end-to-end risk-based quality management support from pre-study risk planning and all the way through operations, not just statistical vetting of data, but key risk indicators, quality tolerance limits, and now very deep data exploration and visualization support as well. So really a full gamut. So we've come to what I would call a leadership position in the industry in supporting risk-based quality management. And that's really where my passion was. So it was really a perfect place for me to join CluePoints and help continue to evangelize and support the industry in successful implementation of this new paradigm.
Let's go back to what you said a couple minutes ago around fraud detection. That was one of the first things that I think many of us sort of heard about CluePoints. Have you been surprised at how frequently or how not frequently fraud has been detected?
I'm actually surprised. Of course, we've all heard of some famous publicized cases over the past, 20 years of fraud. So we all knew it existed. I would say prior to joining CluePoints, I would have thought, yeah, it exists, but it's probably pretty rare. I have to say, in the 4 years I've been with CluePoints, it's less rare than I actually had thought it was. Still relatively rare. I don't want to sound a big alarm bell here, but it definitely happens, and it happens in various degrees. There are still instances of major intentional misconduct in clinical trials. And, we're seeing it. We have, clients that do find it around the world. So it's definitely a problem. It happens, honestly, more often than I would have suspected it happens. But then there's varying degrees of it, Linda. There's a big gray area between intentional misconduct and what you might call sloppiness, or maybe cutting corners in the conduct of studies, where maybe the site doesn't feel like it's a big issue that they're cutting corners here or there. but it is problematic, and it contributes to data quality issues and study quality issues as well. And I have to say, it's virtually every trial has some degree of that.
So at a minimum, it sounds like everybody should be at least looking for types of detection techniques just as a starting point. So what are some of the other things that, as you said, you've expanded the product line? What are some of those things that are a must-have, do you think, that people are implementing across the board and you're really finding helpful?
We produce an online version of a risk planning tool, a RACT tool, and Sulli calls it, and similar to the RAMP tool that MCC has as well, that, more and more of our customers are adopting and taking advantage of for pre-study risk planning. But that's really where it all starts and where it should start. And having a sort of an online solution really helps to facilitate the process, make it much more efficient, fully documented, and then enables really sharing of that risk planning information downstream into the operational components, risk detection and risk management operationally. So we're seeing significant and accelerated adoption of that part of the platform. Operationally, as I said, we started with the advanced statistical engine, which is still really at the heart of the operational risk detection, risk management, and it is a very powerful component of risk detection for our clients. We, of course, a long time ago added key risk indicator dashboards as well. And additionally, QTL support. So we have a module specifically for quality tolerance limit parameters and implementing and managing those. We have modules we've added, such as detecting duplicate patients, which is also, ultimately a quality study conduct related issues, more of a risk on some studies versus others. And so that's being used fairly commonly. And we've added very deep visualization data exploration support as well. We have fairly robust patient profiles module that clients can use to drill down to the patient level. And they can use that not just for risk, supporting exploration of risk, but for medical safety reviews as well. The advantage of something like that is we have integrated with that the statistical methods that highlight within patient profiles data within each patient or patterns of data that are very atypical and really can help enhance and focus medical and safety monitoring reviews. So you can see that there's a broad swath of capabilities. It is primarily focused on risk detection and risk follow-up. I mean, there's also integrated workflow support, very robust, so that risks that are detected can be fed into a workflow process that's very well documented, integrates with other downstream systems like CTMS, and really helps study teams to fully track and document the full history of a risk through resolution.
Let's talk a little bit more about that concept of resolution. So it sounds like you have quite a robust data analytics engine, and it's giving some visualization to various end users. Are people able to take this content and actually do something with it and take action and get some resolution?
They absolutely can, and they do, of course. So risks are surfaced using our statistical engine, our KRIs, QTLs, etc. They're very easily, central monitors or an equivalent role using clue points will formalize those into risk signals, then share them with the study team. I will say, though, that probably one of the biggest challenges that we see, not for all organizations, but definitely it's a common theme, is difficulty in follow through to resolution of risks. And there's a number of different reasons for that, but it's less about technology. It's more about, I would say, still there's a lot of challenges with, I'll say, resistance to change, perhaps to some extent in some organizations, a lack of full understanding across the organization of what central monitoring is bringing to them. that and really accepting and incorporating it into their thinking and their workflows for resolving issues. So we have Clue Points is a tool that provides clearly is very powerful at providing identification of risk for study teams that represent real issues in the conduct of the study. We see a big risk in sometimes clinical operations site management teams that a combination of either don't understand what they're seeing and or I'll even say some defensiveness in responding to it. And I think there's a number of different reasons for that, but ultimately it boils to a change management type issue within organizations. So you have this great ability to detect potential issues in the field and real issues in the field using analytics and statistical methods and KRIs. You still need to have the whole organization cross-functionally on board with it and understanding it and effectively following through, discovering, understanding and looking for understanding and confirming the root cause of what they're seeing from central monitoring, and then taking corrective action where necessary.
So it's a lot more than just simply hiring you, having you gather their data and spit out reports. That's really just the beginning. It's got that people, process, technology triad going on, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Do you guys get involved with training people?
We do. I mean, Clue Points is and continues to be primarily a solution provider. So we are a software company. We provide an advanced solution for RBQM, but we take a very consultative approach. So we really look to be trusted advisors to our clients. And it really depends on where each client is. Many clients are coming in and don't have a lot of pre-knowledge or experience in RBQM. And for those clients, we'll get more involved in guiding them on best practice around RBQM, starting with pre-study risk planning as they're implementing the Clue Points tool. But it's not deep consulting engagements. It's more of part of how we're holding their hands as we're helping them implement our solution to support RBQM. So the amount of consultation we give varies, but we're always looking to provide our experience, and we have a lot of deep industry experience at Clue Points. That's part of the plan. Right from our CEO on down, we've continued to bring people on board that have a lot of clinical operations and RBQM experience in the industry, so that we're able to provide really, really solid best practice guidance to our clients as they're implementing RBQM.
I think you've covered a fair amount. We're going to take a quick break so I can tell you a little bit about the MCC Summit, and we'll be right back. If you've enjoyed this discussion so far, please join us at the MCC Clinical Trial Risk and Performance Management Virtual Summit, taking place September 8 through 10, 2020. We've taken our successful face-to-face summit format and completely retooled it to deliver a unique, engaging, interactive multimedia experience. Beginning on August 26th, you'll have access to pre-recorded case study presentations about quality design, risk-based quality management, risk-based monitoring, vendor oversight, and site management. Then on September 8th, you'll move to the 3-day virtual live portion of the summit. FDA keynote speaker Dr. Jean Melinda will share a regulatory compliance perspective on improving clinical trial quality, protection of trial participants, and data integrity. Next, you and other participants will gather in virtual breakout rooms to meet the pre-recorded session speakers and engage in facilitated community discussions about various risk and performance management topics. Some participants will opt to take it to the next level, to roll up their sleeves and join a virtual working group to build a solution during the summit. Participants will prep for the working group by viewing a selection of pre-recorded presentations and gathering information prior to the live session. Topics to be explored in this format include centralized monitoring KRIs and QTLs. What do you measure and what's useful? Reassessing risk during study conduct. When and why? How to define and estimate IT system benefits before selection, and the most important questions about vendor performance that your organization seeks to answer. And finally, for those of you who have participated in the summit in the past, let me reassure you that the data analytics team exercise, aka Follow the Data Trail competition, will be run at the virtual summit. So don't miss out on this opportunity to participate in this unique event. It's time to meet your peers, collaborate, share ideas, and think. To register for the summit, visit www.mcc-summit.com. I want to make sure you got that. It's www.mcc-summit.com. And here's the kicker. If you subscribe to the CTO podcast, remember it's free and you just have to click on subscribe. You can use this discount code, POD15, to receive 15% off your registration fee. That's right. Just subscribe and enter the code POD15 and you will receive a 15% discount on registration. So visit www.mcc-summit.com for details today. Welcome back to CTO. So Steve, when we left off, you were talking about some of the challenges that organizations sometimes have with actually translating what's being seen over into action. Do you have anything else to add to that before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, there's one other thing. I mean, just more specifically, I mean, for every organization, I think the challenges are a little different, but I think there's pieces of, it's a variety of things that are contributing. But I do see in many organizations, a big part of it is that there's a natural built-in resistance, unfortunately, from some of the stakeholders in clinical operations and in the site management organizations. And perhaps, and this is something that we've actually started a conversation with a number of our clients on is, in overcoming that, education is part of it, but maybe QA should be playing, or a QA rep for the clinical team should be more proactively involved in the process. And what I mean by that in more particular is perhaps reviewing the output of central monitoring, especially in cases where it's identifying sites that appear to be at significant risk across a number of indicators or statistical results. That would be an independent type player on the clinical team that is objectively reviewing it and getting involved in that discussion and helping the team decide what appropriate next steps are. So having that type of voice involved as well. That might be one thing to consider, but what organizations have to do, regardless of the approach, is figure out how to ensure that risks are not ignored, that they really are being looked into, that root causes are being confirmed. And unfortunately, there's dynamics in organizations conspiring against that. So organizations rolling out RBM and central monitoring really have to take that into account and make sure that they're addressing it proactively.
That's an interesting point. We've actually at MCC been also exploring the connection between, QA and RBM anyway, and RBQM, that there's a logical connection between the two in terms of, issues happen and some preventive actions may need to be implemented over within the RBQM program, and things that become risks that become issues can end up over on the QA issue CAPA side again. And there seems to be quite a disconnect between the two. Sometimes it's different language, so people don't quite realize that they're related. But often it's really the silo, the idea that QA has to be completely separate, that sometimes prevents those two groups from working together. So it'll be interesting to see as we move forward in the next couple of years if we start to see some of those barriers come down.
Yeah, Linda, you've done a great job of raising that point. I know about the disconnect and the obvious connection that there should be with the CAPA process and having QA involved. So I agree with you wholeheartedly that industry and organizations should really be looking about that and thinking in those terms.
Let's move on to one of the final topics here, which is, you've had a bunch of organizations that have been CluePoint's customers for a long time. What happened when this COVID pandemic hit? What are some things that you found that you have had to put in place, or questions your customers have had, and maybe how you've had to use your platform to help them within the new world of the COVID pandemic?
Sure, sure. Well, I certainly, and as probably most everyone's aware, there's been big impacts on clinical research in general. From our perspective, I mean, at a high level, certainly as I'm sure many are aware, there's been impacts on organizations delaying the start of new clinical research, of new studies, because of all the uncertainty, the anticipated difficulties with recruiting patients in various trials. But for ongoing trials, a lot of operational problems in terms of, can patients actually make their visits physically? If not, can they do remote visits? And all of that has been a big scramble for organizations. And overriding all of that is then, of course, maintaining quality, which is fundamental. You want to make sure that you have reliable outcomes and results at the end of your trial. That's why we're doing clinical research. What's conspired, of course, even against at least some of the quality management, has been the restriction on site monitoring visits. What that's meant is that a lot of organizations that may not have jumped into centralized monitoring, centralized risk monitoring yet, have been really forced to the table. So for Clue Points, it's actually been very exciting because we've had a lot more organizations coming to us realizing that they need to start leveraging remote and centralized monitoring approaches, because they simply don't have, the reliance on on-site monitoring that was there is not available largely to them anymore. Now, with that also, we've spent a lot of time proactively with our clients, guiding them on best practices, even existing clients, during this pandemic time for centralized monitoring. Because, I'll just say quickly at a high level, all of our clients, along with us, have anticipated a much higher degree of non-compliance in general during this pandemic time. And that definitely has played out. Non-compliance in terms of missed patient visits or missed assessments, things like that are going on. Delays in data entry. So various types of logistical issues with trials. So in a sea of relative non-compliance during this pandemic time, question from a central monitoring and risk detection is, okay, how do you detect what's truly important, among the sea of non-compliance, which is a principle of RBM anyway, right? Which is to focus on what matters. It's just even that much more important when you have a sea of non-compliance to even further make sure that you're focusing on what's most important. So we've done a lot of work advising our clients on how to really further focus your risk detection efforts during this time.
Do you think when we get through this transition with COVID and we get back to a more open opportunity to run trials, do you think that some of what you've been learning right now will carry forward in terms of really focusing on what matters, or you think we'll go back to the old way?
No, I think a lot of it is going to stick, Linda. I'm very confident in that, actually. I think, as I said before, organizations are really being forced to the table with central monitoring, and I'll call it's good medicine, right? But I think now that they're at the table, they're realizing, and eyes are being opened, and people are realizing more that, oh, wait a second, this is perhaps a better way or a really important component of efficient and effective quality oversight and quality management in clinical research. So from what I'm seeing, I think I'm very confident that this is going to stick, and the concepts along with that, like really focusing on what matters most, which is part of the RBQM mindset. It's really going to help the industry overall in terms of moving the ball forward, that much faster. We've come a long way, but I think, out of challenging times like this, often results in faster innovation. And I think that is happening.
That's great to hear. Well, now we're coming to the part of the segment at the end of the show where we ask all of our guests the same 3 questions. So here are the questions. What's the biggest challenge facing the clinical trial industry today? What are some of the best new innovations that you're seeing? And what is your top optimization takeaway? You've certainly talked about many of these within our discussion so far, but if you'd like to add anything new or recap what you think is the biggest challenge, move forward, please.
Sure. Well, I guess challenges is the flip side of opportunity, right? So I see challenges and opportunities tied very closely together. We've just talked about risk-based quality management, and risk-based quality management, of course, is a huge opportunity for the industry, and it has been for a while. And more organizations are taking advantage of what RBQM can provide to them. What got me passionate about it in the first place was that I saw it and continue to see it as a huge win-win for the industry. And what I mean by a win-win is not only will RBQM lead to higher quality outcomes in clinical research and better operational success, but with much greater efficiency as well. That's been one of the challenges in the industry over the last 20 years is the rapidly increasing cost and duration of clinical research. So really, RBQM is a must-have. It continues to be. But with big innovations like RBQM, the challenge continues to be, and we talked about it, I'll just summarize it as change management. We're in a very conservative industry that hasn't changed, and it is really taken quite a while to socialize, gather evidence, and really turn minds and mindsets towards this new paradigm. So, that will continue, I think, to be one of the biggest challenges, and not just with RBQM, but with other big innovations. And you ask about, I don't know about the best innovation. You mean besides clue points? I really think, virtual clinical trials, and that's also something that I think is being accelerated coming out of this pandemic experience, right? So, and organizations are being forced to think more and more about, can we do remote patient visits or virtual patient visits? So I think that's a good thing, and it's a big innovation, and it's going to really change the clinical trial landscape over the next 5 to 10 years in many ways. Not that we're going to get rid of on-site visits altogether, but we're going to definitely be in a new paradigm. And technology is going to continue to be a big enabler, and technology is advancing rapidly. eCOA, ePro technology that allows us to collect and monitor patients remotely and more on an ongoing basis. So closer to like a real world evidence type setting where patients are in their, we're taking measurements from patients in their daily, lifestyle more and more. So these are big advancements I see for clinical research. Of course, quality management is going to continue to be transcendent and need to be a huge part of that. And with quality management, we have to ask questions like, how do you ensure quality in virtual trials or siteless trials? What are the dimensions of risk and study conduct that we need to monitor, and how best do we monitor them? How do we mine all of the huge magnitude or potentially huge magnitude of patient data that's streaming in on an ongoing basis from wearable devices and ePro and eCOA devices over time? So those will be challenges that we welcome facing those over the next few years. But so it's going to be very exciting, and of course, with all that innovation and opportunity comes the challenges of managing it as well. And
the final question, your top optimization takeaway. What's going to really drive optimization?
I continue to see technology is going to be at the forefront of enabling innovation. One thing we're doing at Clue Points and is certainly a hot topic in the industry is artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I strongly believe that that's one particular area of technology and innovation that is going to be a big enabler for optimization. We're using it, we're investing heavily in it at Clue Points and already implementing machine learning techniques to help our clients more efficiently and effectively detect and manage risk in the field. So that's going to continue to be, I think, a big part of. And I know machine learning and artificial intelligence techniques are being used in a growing number of areas in clinical research, which is really good and very important.
Well, thank you so much. I've enjoyed our conversation today and look forward to having you at the MCC Summit, where many of these conversations and topics will be expanded on. So thank you for joining me.
Thanks a lot, Linda. Look forward to the summit as well. Thank you.
I'd also like to thank our producer, Michael Levin Epstein. And finally, we want to hear from you. Rate us on iTunes. Are there topics we should be discussing? Guests we absolutely have to have on the show? Let us know by emailing us at lsullivan@metricschampion.org. This is Linda Sullivan, and we'll see you next time on CTO, the Clinical Trials Optimization Podcast.